We're headed to Mono Lake Tufa State National Reserve in California. Mono Lake is over 1 million years old and home to these odd tufa towers.
This is one of those landscapes that just baffles me. How does something like this exist on the planet Earth?
The tufas are actually made out of calcium carbonate, and they're created from the hot springs that are underneath the water. And typically they would never be seen, but because the lake levels are so low, they're now up on the shoreline.
If it's calcium carbonate, is it like Soda Stream, but with calcium and it bubbles up?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly how it is. They literally just bubble up from these mineral deposits that are in the ground from the hot springs, and the heat helps that process.
Yeah, because I noticed when we were walking around, everything was so porous looking. I mean, there were even these sections that look like wasp nests. Everything was so fragile.
Yeah, they are extremely fragile because they're mostly protected underwater. When they're out of the water, they become dry and brittle. They're something that is really in need of protection.
Even when my time is limited when I'm drawing on site, I do take the time to throw together a couple quick thumbnails. I purposefully draw the thumbnails in the drawing media that I'll do the final drawing in. It gets my hand moving and in the mindset of the charcoal pencil. A big part of it is loosening up my arm, moving it around the paper before I actually start the final drawing. I chose the charcoal pencil because it has a ragged, brittle quality to the mark, which is totally unpredictable, and it has an inherent roughness to it, which seemed to match the tufas really well. You really can't make a clean line with these charcoal pencils. This cold pressed watercolor paper has a roughness to it, so you combine that with something as textured as the charcoal pencil, you end up with very, very rough lines and tones.
It takes a while for nature to repair itself, but it eventually does.
Where's the green?
You see some of these green patches over here, and where it's regrowing. The same thing happens with the trees. You'll get little like green buds popping up or bushes popping up around the bottom of the trees. I love how figurative some of these like bush remnants are. It's just, they look like they're reaching out to the sky.
Or they're bending over in a really uncomfortable way that looks like it hurts.
Almost tormented. If you look out, all of this area caught on fire, I believe in like either 2015 or 2016. And you can see the just devastation and what the scrub brush was happened to it. I think it was all started by a lightning strike, and another reason to really take an account of protecting what we have, the resources we have here.
In the beginning of a drawing, I really like to draw with a continuous line throughout the entire composition. It's a way of maintaining a fluidity in my lines. If I break them up too much, it makes me feel like the composition is being fragmented. This is a continuous line where I'm not even lifting my charcoal pencil from the paper. I do make an effort to vary the physical pressure as I'm creating this continuous line. Sometimes I'm putting a lot of physical pressure onto the line. Other times, my charcoal pencil is barely touching the paper.
The lake was actually much, much larger before the 1950s, when the city of Los Angeles started diverting the water that comes out of the mountains from like the snowpack, and they started diverting it to Los Angeles. The water started dropping significantly over the years. It took a while before the residents of Lee Vining, which is the town that the lake is in, were able to come up with a grassroots movement and try to fight the city of Los Angeles.
This is not a fight that's done.
There was a lawsuit, and they did get enough of a win where there is now a plan in place for Los Angeles to stop taking as much water so that the lake will have an opportunity to eventually fill up, but it's probably going to take a really long time for that to happen.
I feel like the place is so eerie. There's something about the very specific color scheme. One of the reasons I had trouble picking a place to paint was that it is so monochromatic at first. And then when you get up close, you're like, oh my gosh, there's like purple and lavender and seafoam green. And it surprised me that it had that much color, even though when we approached it, it really looked like a black and white colors.
A lot of the tufas have become sun bleached, but you do get those pockets of green and purples. Some of it is just from the dirt that is in the area above the lake and things that come down in the atmosphere. It is very monochromatic.
When we were walking down the path to approach the lake, there was tons of sagebrush. And then as we got closer to the lake, there were just a couple tufas. And I was like, this doesn't look right. These don't seem like they should be here. And then, of course, as we got closer to the lake, it almost switched places where there was just a little bit of sagebrush that was distributed around the tufas. The tufas and the sagebrush. There's no rhyme or reason. Why are they together?
I really like this pan pastel sponge. It's soft, but it also has a really nice density to it, which makes it possible for me to really push the charcoal pencil dust throughout the composition. That's a way to bring these soft passages of tone into these more brittle looking lines. I like to think about drawing as a very sculptural process where you're adding and constantly subtracting. My erasers are a really big part of that. This hard eraser, I put so much physical pressure on it. I mean, it really feels like I'm sculpting with that eraser physically. Bringing out the highlights on the top areas of the tufas with my eraser stick, super important in terms of really getting the volume of those tufas by accentuating the light and shadow.
So the obsidian comes from the mountains. There was volcanic activity, I think, and when it violently erupted, that came and it landed all the way out here. So obsidian is a black rock. It is extremely sharp. I think it's sharper than glass. It is a lava rock that is made when rock is heated up really quickly and then cooled down really quickly, and then it turns into obsidian.
Bamboo reed pens are so much fun because they're extremely unpredictable. You don't know if it's going to make a big blob of ink somewhere or if it's going to barely touch the surface of the page. That was the perfect match for really trying to articulate all of those random nooks and crannies scattered throughout the landscape. I'm using walnut ink, which is a very mild, very subtle ink. It's tinted brown. What's special about walnut ink, there's something about the way it flows that makes it feel like it's really gliding across the page. Walnut ink is also really light in value, and so you can't get a really dark with it. So it merges beautifully with the other media. Everything in the forms of the tufas feels so random. It's hard to know what to tackle when a landscape like this is so textured and totally random in terms of the arrangement of the forms. I pay a lot of attention to the concavities, little pockets of space throughout the tufas that feel like they could lead me to another place. I've always been a figurative artist, and I have a way of always finding a figure in whatever it is that I'm drawing. I kept thinking about these tufas as figures, that each one had its own unique gesture and even posture to the way that it stood up.
The lake levels were at their normal levels. You would have never seen the tufas. The sagebrush is very natural to the area. California has such a diverse ecosystem and such diverse plant life that you could go just a couple miles down the road and then you're in pine tree forests, whereas this place is almost like high desert. The whole mountain range was created from volcanic activity. Mammoth Mountain is a volcano.
But why does it look like a cute little forest?
It's a dormant volcano, but it is a volcano. There is a place called Obsidian Dome, which has massive boulders of obsidian up there.
Boulders?
Yes, boulders. Even outside of the Mona Lake Visitor Center, there is a massive boulder that they have right outside. It's huge.
Why is it that some of the tufas are chunky and rock shaped, but then there's these ones that are really tall and super elegant and graceful? Why are those ones so tall? Is it just they got to bubble up higher?
If you think about how the water moves, if it's moving choppy and stuff, it may not build up as tall. It's not going to have a chance to do that. It would be more condensed to the ground. And these other ones, maybe when the lake is less choppy, more smooth, the water has a chance to bubble it up higher without it getting disturbed.
I think a lot of artists think that the reason somebody connects with a piece of artwork is because, oh, it's so beautifully painted and I love how lovely that looks. And certainly that is the case a lot of the time. What I have found to be more significant actually is when somebody has a personal connection to the subject matter. In this case, it's the Mono Lake. And you've been to Mono Lake tons of times and you know the place so well. And so how is it different to see the lake seen through my eyes as a complete tourist, knowing nothing about the place?
When I saw your wonder about the area, that was magical.
Really?
It was.
Because I'm going like, what? Oh my God, look at that. Look at that.
That was so magical. If you can share something so special and someone else can appreciate it, that means a lot. So when I see the work that you did on site, I could see that you appreciated it in a similar way that I appreciate it, and that you got it. You understood the specialness of that place. Honestly, that super touched me.
I love that. Oftentimes, I feel a little guilty going to places as a tourist because I'm basically skimming the surface because I just haven't had the time here. But I think learning about the place, knowing how delicate this ecosystem is and how it really is trying to recover from a major trauma, that also informs the work. What I like to think is that the painting is a breathing testimony to hearing and understanding the place beyond just what it looks like. I mean, sure, it's freaking cool looking, but it's awesome to know about. But it's so nice to hear the story behind that place because every place has a story.
The Tufas really feel like they are visual contradictions. They almost feel like they could be like bones that are disintegrating from all the holes that are in them. But then I look at the actual forms of the Tufas, and some of them just look really dopey to me. The landscape really feels like it's simultaneously playful and whimsical, but also a little bit haunting.